BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. All right, hello everybody. Today is Wednesday, time for the AMA. Welcome to the show. This is the Ask Me Anything, where I respond to your questions and comments, and we have a discussion. But before we begin, I would like to address a particular comment when somebody asked, will you ever do a call-in show? And I would absolutely love to do something like that, where you guys could call in and we could actually have some conversations on air. I think that unless I had somebody else monitoring and screening the calls and getting people lined up in order, then it would be a little bit difficult to do by myself. So I think the first thing that I would do with that would be something quite similar to the now deplatformed Free Domain Radio, where people would call in at a prearranged time, and it would be a much more extended version of a discussion show. Like somebody would call in and we would expect to talk for 30 minutes or 40 minutes. Maybe that could happen by the end of the year, but I would absolutely love to do something like that. Other people have simply requested live streams where they can ask questions directly and I can respond to them on the air, doing it through some type of live feed. I would love to do all of those things, but for now, please put your questions and comments in the section below, and maybe they'll be used in a future AMA. First, I would like to give a shout out to Colonel Reb, who left a couple comments referring to someone known as the Cackler, and that is simply Kamala Harris, our vice president. And if I recall, though, Colonel Reb originally said this, don't fear the giggler, fear the cackler. The giggler was the serial killer Kenneth Harrison, and I have an episode about him here on this channel. But there aren't enough days in the week. For example, we do the 3 episodes, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then the bonus episodes on the weekends talking about the serial killer, Leonard Paradiso. And with that one, it is meant to explore, did Leonard Paradiso actually commit all of the crimes that have been attributed to him, particularly the murders of Joan Webster and Marie Iannuzzi, which occurred in 1981 and 1979, respectively. And if I had one more day in the week, I would want to find out, did Kenneth Harrison, the giggler, actually murder all of the victims that have been attributed to him? There are only 4 victims that have been connected to the serial killer, the giggler, who operated in the late 1960s in the Boston area. He's also known as the Boston Giggler. The first was a little girl aged 6 years. She was 6 years old. Her name was Lucy Paul Marine. And then his next victim was an older woman named Clover Parker. And one of his victims was named Joe Breen. He was a man who was at the age of an adult. And the final victim, the crime that I'm the most curious about, was the murder of someone named Kenneth Martin. Yes, they're both named Kenneth, but with the first 3 victims of the giggler, Lucy Paul Marine, Clover Parker, and Joe Breen, they were all thrown into the water. That was like his signature. With the final victim, Kenneth Martin, he was strangled with a piece of twine, and his body was found in an abandoned subway tunnel under a piece of canvas. And from the beginning, I was suspicious of that. Did the serial killer Kenneth Harrison actually commit the murder of Kenneth Martin? And all different ages, different genders, very, very inconsistent behavior from a serial killer, so it's quite possible. But if there was an 8th day in the week, I would love to do a deep dive segment into the murder of Kenneth Martin and find out what actually happened. As far as deep dive segments go, I think the most obvious one on this channel is the Zodiac Killer. And then I said I added the segment on Leonard Paradiso, Joan Webster, Marie Iannuzzi. But I guess the easiest way to refer to it is the Paradiso Files. And you can hear those on the weekends. But in the past, I have done a couple other deep dive segments. Back in 2018, I openly asked you guys, like, what would you like to hear about on this channel? But it was very small at the time, and I ended up doing something called Occult Mondays, which didn't only get into things like ghost stories, but just any form of paranormal discussion, and then it kind of morphed into the cult leaders who claim that they can summon the occult, and there's a playlist from that material called Cult and the Occult on this channel that you could also hear, but it's the old-fashioned gray box recordings. The original idea that I had for that deep dive segment was to do it on this guy named Christopher Nemelka, and he is someone who has been accused of being a cult leader. He runs an organization in Utah. He's just the spokesperson of it, that is. They're called Marvelous Work and a Wonder. I have numerous episodes about them here on this channel. But in 2018, I thought, I'm not going to do that as a deep dive segment. I didn't think anyone would be so keen on listening to that. And the third topic that I entertained was the murder of Sherry Jo Bates. I mean, I thought that that would be very valuable to do on YouTube, to have just a weekly segment on that particular murder. And I wanted to find out who actually killed Sherry Jo Bates. Was she murdered by the Zodiac Killer? Was she murdered by an ex-boyfriend? It really is a very large and powerful story. Back in 2018, though, I decided that I didn't want to do a murder story for the deep dive segment, because I thought that after a certain point I would become desensitized to the information, and I wouldn't approach the subject with the correct sense of integrity. And I wanted to focus more on something that was a little more benign or a little bit more harmless. That's why I went with Occult Mondays, talking about cult leaders and their ability to summon paranormal phenomenon or something like that. But that was back in 2018, and I think that we've covered a lot of ground with the serial killer Leonard Paradiso, if anyone wants to tune into those weekend episodes, as well as with the Zodiac Killer. And I've been really looking forward to going through all of this material about the true crime world with you guys. And you guys leave some excellent questions, and I can't do it alone. You guys guide me to the right place all the time. A lot of very good ideas come from you people here in the comments section. I encourage anybody to leave any type of comments that you want. So without further ado, let's get to some of the comments that you guys have left here about the Zodiac Killer. And recently I did an episode on the Sacramento freeway murders, and the first one comes to us from Todd K., who says, the 1986 letter looks very much like authentic Zodiac. I think he was already done with his risky behavior, but maybe not done with letter writing. I think he had a new stable life to protect. Yeah, the Sacramento freeway murders occurred in 1986, and then a Zodiac letter was written. And what I said in that episode was, if this is a forgery, then it is a pretty good one, because the handwriting is very similar. But it definitely doesn't contain all of the precise information. Like, I will state some facts that only I and the police know. And Tyler Grover would like to add something to that. I don't think this is a Zodiac letter. It looks very inauthentic. The words that are crossed out are followed by the exact same word, and terms and phrases are the same as the Zodiac used in the past. It seems like someone who is trying hard to make it look and sound like the Zodiac. There are two things that I would respond to about the handwriting on the 1986 letter. And the first is, yes, I noticed that too. I didn't say it because I didn't really know how exactly to put it into the correct phrasing, but it looks like the person who wrote the 1986 letter started by writing a word and then crossed out the word and then wrote the same prefix. Like, there's no correction there, or there's no change that has been made. It looks like it's done intentionally. So that's a good observation by Tyler Grover. But the second thing that I wanted to point out was, when the Zodiac Killer wanted to cross something out, he often just drew a line through it, as opposed to scribbling and shading over it completely. Maybe there's some better examples of that throughout the numerous Zodiac communications, But that is something that I was curious about. I didn't even want to say that because I'm kind of putting my neck out there. But in other Zodiac correspondences, there is just a line that is drawn through the prefix when he wanted to cross something out, as opposed to shading everything. Our next comment comes to us from Toxcoy, who says, out of the canonical Zodiac crimes, which one do you find the most mysterious? And I love the way this is phrased, the word mysterious, because that's really what it's about. And to answer this question, hands down, 100%, the Lake Herman Road murders, the first confirmed Zodiac incident on December 20th of 1968. That is the one that I find the most mysterious. I didn't have to think for a second about it. Because Lake Herman Road is a Zodiac crime that stands out from the others. With the Lake Herman Road murders, there's just such a high probability that it could have been a drug-related or gang-related crime. We're talking about the murders of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. With the murder of Paul Stein, a piece of Paul Stein's shirt was mailed in with the letters. With the Lake Berryessa stabbing, somebody committed the crime while wearing the Zodiac symbol on their clothing. And yes, the Blue Rock Springs shooting is somewhat similar to the Lake Herman Road murders, where somebody approaches the car and they're firing some gunshots. So there's a man and a woman in the car in both of those incidents. But here's a big difference between Blue Rock Springs, which occurred on July 4th and saw the murder of Darlene Ferrin, and the Lake Herman Road murders. It doesn't have this backstory of how David Faraday is interacting with the local drug underworld. The long story short is, it appears that there was somebody who was at David Faraday's high school who was somewhat of a local drug pusher. I don't even know if I could call him a dealer, someone very low level. And David Faraday either ratted him out or wanted to rat him out or had confronted the guy, and they're supposed to have a fight that day. But I heard on the podcast, I think the name of the YouTube title is Zodiac Killer Named, if you want to find it. But they're saying that David Faraday was supposed to fight the guy, and the other guy chickened out. Because even though David Faraday is this clean-cut guy, a God and Country Eagle Scout, he's also a wrestler and someone who could have defended himself very easily. So the other guy chickened out. And when I was exchanging some comments on Evan from Texas's channel, with Evan that is, he shared one thing about the rumor is that somebody wanted to either retaliate. There was going to be another incident later on in the evening where somebody was going to fight David and bring a pair of brass knuckles to try and level the playing field, or just to try and blindside David. So one of the leading theories about why David and Betty Lou are in that parking lot at Lake Herman Road is not for physical intimacy. It has nothing to do with their relationship. It has nothing to do with their first date. Is that there was supposed to be a fight there. I don't know why David would have brought Betty Lou to meet some thugs at a parking lot on Lake Herman Road. But if anything, it shows that teenagers did frequently go to that parking lot. So, as far as the connections to the drug underworld, it's a little bit more than just pissing off a high school drug pusher. That person could have gone to his supplier and said, hey, this guy David Faraday is going to the police. And then it was the supplier who showed up, blindsided David and Betty Lou. They could have borrowed somebody's car. They could have been using other people's IDs. They could have been just expecting that David Faraday was going to go there for a fight, or maybe some type of confrontation, or even another possibility that because David had potentially ratted somebody out, he knew that there was going to be a drug bust in that area that night, and that his presence in the parking lot at Lake Herman Road is twofold. The first is he simply pulled over because he wanted to have a conversation with Betty Lou, and Tyler Grover and Chevy Cat Black were writing that in the comments section. They thought that David drove Betty Lou to that parking lot to pull over, and he was going to give her his class ring and ask her to be his steady girlfriend. So, not for physical intimacy, not for privacy, but just to have a conversation. And then once again, either the Zodiac Killer blindsided them, or somebody from this local gang showed up and retaliated against David Faraday for interfering with their business, or also wrong place at the wrong time, because there was a drug bust that was supposed to be going on nearby. There are numerous reasons, and we do not know 100% about why they're in the parking lot. But if you do look at a graphic of Lake Herman Road, you can see that it is really close to the main road, but if anything, Lake Herman Road is a shortcut between Benicia and Vallejo, and it's a stopover point. It's a place where teenagers frequently went. Whether people think it's a lover's lane or not, whether they think it's a drug dealing spot or not, it's a place where teenagers went. So if this was just some type of psychopathic serial killer looking for an opportune target, yeah, that would have also been suitable. The people who think that there was a single Zodiac killer and not any of the other alternative theories. We know this because earlier that evening, a different couple, a different teenage boyfriend and girlfriend pulled over into the parking lot, and the boyfriend was looking under the hood of the car, and a suspicious vehicle pulled in. He got startled because he thought something was odd, and then he just closed the hood, gets in the driver's seat, and gets out of there. With the alternative theories in the other canonical Zodiac crimes, Blue Rock Springs, Lake Berryessa, and the Paul Stein murder, you don't really have that type of strong possibility of something else. At Blue Rock Springs, there is the potential that maybe they didn't only go to the park, they meaning Darlene Ferrin and Mike Michaud, they may have gone to the park to buy drugs, to buy some marijuana and some pills, so the legend says. But also, Mike Michaud may have gone there to sell stolen goods to a local drug dealer or a local criminal named Donald Warren Porter. Another alternative theory is that Jim Phillips Crabtree was following Darlene Ferrin and he committed the shooting, or that Richard Hoffman simply had Darlene Ferrin bumped off because he was jealous of the other people that she was with, but she didn't want to be with him. Or it could have just been the Zodiac Killer. I mean, but I don't really find those alternative explanations as thorough, as detailed, and as compelling as the one associated with Lake Herman Road. But that is a really good question, and I'm glad that one was asked. Okay, now moving on to the next question here. This one comes to us from Mr. Barlow. This is a comment, rather. After the 340 was solved in December 2020, there is a line there that confirms what I thought about the Zodiac Killer. He had stopped killing after the Paul Stein murder. In the 340, the Zodiac states, "Now that I have enough slaves." This tells me he is done killing. I think he got scared shitless after coming so close to getting caught. He called it quits, so all other claims are lies, in my opinion. And this was posted on the recent episode, The Sacramento Freeway Murders 1986. But an important thing to remember about the freeway murders is, even if the Zodiac Killer did not commit that crime, which I don't believe he did either, I definitely do not believe the Zodiac committed the Sacramento freeway murders in 1986. He could have written the letter. But I do think that Mr. Barlow has made an excellent observation about that. About, the line in the 340 is, "Now that I have enough slaves." And I have to also restate one of my own beliefs about the 340 is that the Zodiac Killer was probably expecting that it wouldn't take 52 years for people to solve it. And no, that wasn't me on the TV. And also, like the thing about Slaves in Paradise, I'm not afraid of the gas chamber. Those are so contemporary and so relevant to 1969 that he thought maybe it would have been solved within 5 months or 6 months or something like that, not 52 years. But now that I have enough slaves, doesn't that sound like the criminal work may have been completed? I completely agree there. On to our next comment from Jason Blank, who says, "If Zodiac was Don Chaney, then he did give his identity in the 408 by saying, 'Born in Paradise,' Paradise being a family name." Hey, Jason, This is some good stuff. I mean, Drew Beeson recently released that piece of info that Don Chaney had a relative named Paradise, Mary Martha Paradise, and I believe he's also connected to someone named Mary Ingersoll Paradise, if that's correct. But it's not spelled conventionally. It's spelled Paraddice. And moving from the 340 cipher to the 408 cipher, the Zodiac said, "When I die, I will be reborn in paradise." Born in paradise is also written in there. I mean, I do admit you do have to modify the words a little bit, but is that showing that there's some sort of familial connection associated with Don Chaney? Very possible. I mean, like, there could be something, depending on how, uh, how deep that would have run with Don Chaney, or if Don Chaney did indeed compose that material. Our next comment comes to us from Vinyl Solution on the Domingos-Edwards murders, and we're talking about the June 4th, 1963 double homicide of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards near Gaviota State Park. And what Vinyl Solution says is, wrong, no connection. You don't know SoCal beach culture. You can find beachgoers at all times of year. I'm a West Virginian. I've never been to Southern California. Well, that's not true. I did fly into Orange County once, but it's one of those things where the plane lands and it's not even a layover because you don't really get off the plane. I don't even know if they still do those things anymore, but I spent like an hour sitting in a plane in Orange County, but you guys don't need to hear about that. No, I've never been to Southern California. I completely agree. Anyway, that stretch of highway in Southern California is perfect hunting ground for Zodiac, looking for victims of opportunity. The beaches are completely invisible from the highway. All you see are isolated cars parked on the side of the road. Highway 101 is one of the only two main connections from NorCal to SoCal. You park right on the side of Highway 101 to go to the isolated beaches near Gaviota. This stretch of Highway 101 is a small place filled with towns, campgrounds, surfers, vacationers, and back then hitchhikers, a large transitory population. It's funny, you don't get it. Zodiac considered Gaviota a failure. He failed to control his victims. He failed to create his fantasy. He would not brag about this botched failure. He cleaned up the crime scene not to cover up the crime, but to cover up his messy failure. Zodiac did not get what he wanted, what he fantasized about. Try and try again. He got his fantasy fulfilled at Berryessa. When I gave the Gaviota Beach shooting a rating about like what's the likelihood that it was actually committed by the Zodiac killer, I said 7.9 out of 10, meaning it's not impossible. There is a very high chance that it was actually the Zodiac killer, just for this reason. It looks like the Lake Berryessa stabbing gone wrong, and Michael Cole even wrote that in his book, The Zodiac Revisited Volume 3, when he said that the Zodiac may have committed the murders of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, but he learned that even though he had planned the crime, things did not go according to plan. What the authorities seem confident about is that at Gaviota, I mean, it's just like that. Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards are on the beach. It's a senior skip day. It's in the early to somewhat mid-afternoon, and that somebody approached them, most likely at gunpoint. They had Robert Domingos tied up in some way, and then Domingos was able to break free from the restraints. Then he goes to the assailant. He gets into a physical altercation with him. I'm sure that they're both punching each other. There's a bruise on Robert Domingos' hand. They're getting into this fight. Then he subdues him for a second. He picks up Linda Edwards, and the two of them start running away. Then the assailant regains his composure, and then he starts firing bullets at them, unloads 26 bullets into Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards. I mean, he fired 26 bullets. Of course, some of them missed. That point onward, the perpetrator dragged their bodies about 30 yards, I believe it is, to a seaside shack. And then, once they were in the shack, that person struck some matches to try and set the shack afire, set it ablaze, that is. And it wasn't completely successful. I mean, in fact, it was an absolute failure setting the shack on fire, But it isn't striking the matches and lighting the wood. There was this tarp that was hanging on the door of the seaside shack, and that was what was meant to have been burned. But this comment here from Final Solution continues. This was 100% Zodiac, cruising the coast for perfect isolated victims. The Zodiac murders are not about the victims. It's about the Zodiac's life of mind, Fantasyland. Any investigation into connections to the victims is a complete dead end. I believe the Zodiac was never questioned. He never made it into a suspect list. The investigators never got close. All of these suspects that are named and endlessly discussed are pointless. Alright, I completely followed everything you were saying, Vinyl Solution, with the first half of your comment. I will challenge you on this point here, when you say that it's pointless to look into the connections between the victims and a potential suspect. If we don't know who the Zodiac killer is, I think that's a premature statement. I mean, maybe one of the Zodiac killer victims, or someone who had a connection to Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, would also be a likely suspect, or it could turn out that that person was indeed the Zodiac killer. At this point in time, I wouldn't say that it's pointless. I mean, absolutely not. I mean, if we don't know who the Zodiac is, how can you say that it's impossible that there's a connection between one of the victims and the Zodiac killer? As for your theory that this is genuine Zodiac activity, the Domingos-Edwards murders, how does your theory explain the 4 boxes of ammunition that are found in the seaside shack? And, I mean, there are 4 boxes of .22 caliber ammunition that were left behind. They then used this to track the lot numbers to a local military base in the area. And this was all put out on the show The Hunt for Zodiac, or The Hunt for the Zodiac Killer, rather. So doesn't that suggest that this wasn't just some lone criminal who is driving the Highway 101, looking for a parked car that was by itself, walked out to the cliffside? Yeah, sure, he has a look at the victims and then decides that he's going to go back, get his weapons, like Vinyl Solution has written in another comment. He gets the rope, he gets the knife, and he gets the .22 caliber gun, and walks back to the beach to accost them. But the 4 boxes of ammunition that are left in the seaside shack, doesn't that suggest something else? Let's look at the alternative explanation that has been provided for the Domingos-Edwards murders in 1963. Somebody approached Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards. They have rope, they have a knife, and they have a gun. And then, it's simply a sexual assault gone wrong. Yes, Robert Domingos was tied up for a brief amount of time. The assailant then cut Linda Edwards' swimsuit and was cutting down, first exposes her breast. He was going to finish cutting the swimsuit so he could sexually assault her, but Robert Domingos broke free, knocked the guy over, they got into a fist fight, a scuffle, they're throwing punches at each other, and then they run away. Linda is running with her swimsuit already torn open. It's a sexual assault gone wrong. I mean, numerous people have pointed out the differences between Lake Berryessa and Gaviota, and that's why I still have to say that it's an unconfirmed incident. At Lake Berryessa, the bodies were not moved. The Zodiac killer didn't move the bodies of the victims, more or less. Yes, Cecilia Shepard was turned over at Lake Berryessa, but that was mostly because she was thrashing about while she was being stabbed, as opposed to Brian Hartnell, who played dead. And yes, the Zodiac killer did push Paul Stein's body in the taxicab, but they weren't dragged 30 feet anywhere. And also, nothing was set on fire in any of the confirmed Zodiac crimes: Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, Lake Berryessa, and the Paul Stein murder. I mean, no one tried to set fire to any building in which the victim was in. I mean, most of all of the victims actually were not in a building, excuse me. They were inside of cars, or in the very least in the vicinity of their automobile. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were on a picnic blanket at the time when they were accosted by the Zodiac killer. So, at Gaviota, the person is moving the bodies, he is cutting Linda Edwards' swimsuit, he's trying to set the seaside shack on fire, firing many more bullets. I mean, it really is quite different than the confirmed Zodiac crimes. But am I saying that it's impossible? No, Not at all. Somebody could have done just what he said. It could have been someone has planned this double murder. However, it went horribly wrong, and then the person got out of there by the skin of their teeth. So at Lake Berryessa, the Zodiac killer wanted to recreate that, but more dominant, more powerful, and more flawlessly. All right, well, thank you to everybody who has left some comments here in this first segment, and please stay tuned because we will be right back after this quick message and talking a lot more about true crime. Back in just a second.
You are listening to Black Box Online Radio.
This show is brought to you by TeeSpring. Feel free to check out the merchandise. Almost all sizes and colors are listed.
Black Box Online Radio. And remember YouTube Premium. You can download the show, take it on the go, anywhere and anyhow.
Please like and subscribe. Grazie mille.
Okay, hello everybody, and we are back. I would like to go to our next question, and that comes to us from Tim Howard05, who posted this on the murder of Fred Lane. This is a much older episode. It was done in 2019. And the long story short is to introduce the subject. Fred Lane was a running back for the Carolina Panthers, and he had recently signed with the Indianapolis Colts in the NFL. And then, tragically, he was murdered by his own wife, Deidre Lane. He was walking into his home, and he was shot twice, once in the chest and once in the head, and his keys were still in the lock as he fell to the ground, but she still claimed self-defense, and then it was, of course, obviously a murder. She was convicted of that, and she did just under 8 years in prison before she was released. But the shocking thing about the story of Deidre Lane is that you might be wondering about a motive. The first one is there was a $5 million insurance policy on Fred Lane. You know, he's an NFL player. That doesn't sound that outrageous. I'm sure that she knew about that. But if you go back and listen to that episode, The Murder of Fred Lane, here on this channel, you'll hear one thing that the journalists dug up, and that wasn't even the sole motivation for the murder. Fred Lane also had knowledge of Deidre Lane's brother's activity, his brother-in-law's activity. And his brother-in-law was somebody named John Gary, who had committed a bank robbery, and Deidre Lane wanted Fred Lane to go along with this to be sort of an accessory, or at least cover it up. And we won't know the full extent of everything that happened because Fred Lane is not here to defend himself and give his side of the story. But they speculate that he simply did not want to go along with that, and that he didn't want to jeopardize his NFL career to cover up the illegal actions of her brother, his brother-in-law. So that was a contributing factor to his murder. And Deidre Lane is the subject of she's a subject on the show, Snapped, Women Who Kill. Other YouTubers have also done numerous episodes on Deidre Lane and the murder of Fred Lane since I put mine out in 2019. Tim Howard 05 has written in asking me, can you provide the title or a link to the article that you cited when you did that episode? And I cited a couple different articles in that one, and you can even hear me reading off a paragraph talking about how Deidre Lane murdered her husband, Fred Lane. She then went to jail, as I said, just under 8 years. I believe it's actually 7 1/3, and then, or maybe 7 1/2. Then she gets out of jail, and what I was reading was an article from September of 2019 that says she then was an accessory a second time to bank robbery and was sent back to prison. And if you listen back to the episode, you will hear me pulling out quotations from that one. And I did say that all the citations were from either ESPN or the New York Times, as well as a third source. And Tim Howard was asking where I got that from. I went back and I tried to find that exact article that was talking about it, and I couldn't. And it appears that maybe the publications have done a retraction, or perhaps it was some type of misprint. It just doesn't seem to be the case, and I never want to do that. I never want to put out anything online that could be factually inaccurate. And I know that's coming from some guy like me who all he does is run his mouth on the internet. But accuracy is important, and it appears that that was some incorrect information that went out on that episode, The Murder of Fred Lane. The important pieces are still there, but that Deidre Lane was arrested a second time. I mean, it appears that there is no supporting document behind that. And I was getting it from somewhere. It didn't come out of thin air. But sometimes even articles can auto-update and the dates get changed and such. But I mean, that is something that is really, really quite vital. Maybe there was a retraction that was done by one of the publishers about how she was arrested that second time. But I thank Tim Howard05 for listening back to that old episode on the murder of Fred Lane. It's a shocking and tragic story. All the same, I would invite anybody to check it out here on this channel, as well as some other YouTubers and their coverage. Our next comment is also our next comment. This comes to us from Dirt Poor Richard, the person who recommended the episode on the Reuben Cipher. That was last week's Anything Goes segment, and is talking about the death of Paul Reuben in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, back on the 20th of January, 1953. And when Paul Reuben was found, he was killed with cyanide poisoning. He had actually ingested 10 times the amount of cyanide required to kill an adult male, and he had a strange message that was taped to his abdomen. And Dirt Poor Richard's comment is, "Excellent show, you gave me a lot of information I had never seen before. It's not as well known as it should be. Thank you for doing this. I have one thought. There is a part that says 2pont 14LY. Could this be DuPont Quarterly? It's actually a real thing, some sort of shareholders meeting or something of that. DuPont is a chemical corporation. He was into chemistry. Maybe covered up an environmental disaster, ? Just a thought." I definitely thought about the DuPont Quarterly, and as I was reading through many of the documents in the Reuben Cipher, 142 pages of FBI documents had been declassified and put out on the internet. Big thank you to Cipher Foundation for sharing that. But yeah, the 2PONT, I thought of that as DuPont, and other people have made that observation. That's what I think would be a little bit more valuable. As far as a chemical corporation, yeah, Paul Reuben was studying chemistry, so that there could be something there. Other people think that that might mean, though, simply second point. Like the first point is this, the second point is that, the fourth point is this, and it says 14LY. I mean, yes, it would be fourthly, or, but yeah, quarterly. It really is quite difficult to decipher the message that is contained in what was left behind on Paul Reuben. And Toby Two Toes replied to Dirt Poor Richard saying, "I think it's something like that too, but for oil and gas." There could be a connection there. We always have to bear in mind, though, that the Reuben cipher might not have any precise meaning. I think that it does, though, but ciphers can be duds sometimes. They can contain inaccurate information. And on to the next comment. This one comes to us from Base Jumper on the episode Serial Killer John Aykroyd, Ghosts of Highway 20. And Base Jumper simply says that there was a good point made at 14 minutes into the episode, and that is when I said something that was shared by Byron Pickle, who was the brother of one of the victims who had been murdered by the serial killer John Arthur Aykroyd. Allegedly, though, he was only convicted of the murder of Kay Turner, and Byron Pickle was talking about his own sister, who has been attributed to the serial killer John Aykroyd, who has since passed away in prison as well. But he talked about how John Aykroyd was his stepfather, but he was a very abusive man. And why didn't he speak out more? Why didn't his sister speak out more or alert anybody in the authorities about the abuse? And the good point here that's pointed out at 14 minutes in, said Base Jumper, is this quotation from Byron Pickle. "When the abuse is not happening, you just want to resume normal life." And I definitely think that that's true of people in their childhood, teenage years, early 20s even, all through that time frame. when the abuse isn't happening, people do not talk to anyone about it because it's over, and this is the only time they think that they can experience normal life, so they don't want to get pulled back into this world of abuse. And there are also numerous other reasons why people do not come forward. Embarrassment is a big one. Uncertainty, they don't necessarily know how people are going to react, even if the victim is very clearly aware of what's happening to them, that this person is doing something bad to me, or even if this person is doing something very painful to me. They might also not want to experience any further type of humiliation or unwanted reactions from people. There are numerous reasons why victims of physical abuse and even emotional abuse at a certain point will not come forward with their experiences. Our next comment comes to us from Sean Hanks, who says, "Hey Ned, Sean from Sacramento. I love the video. Awesome job. This was on the most recent episode, the Sacramento Freeway Murders 1986. And when I was looking at sources for the Sacramento Freeway Murders, so many other cases seem to be popping up. Most notably, the I-5 Strangler. Many things that I was trying to find about the Zodiac Killer connection to the freeway murders. We're actually talking about the I-5 Strangler. Maybe that could be a future Anything Goes segment on Friday. But also, there was the story of Nikolai Soltis, and he was a man who had murdered his family. It took place in this area. I saw him on America's Most Wanted when I was a kid. He was a big FBI top 10 most wanted guy. Many horrific things happening in the city of Sacramento. Gotta love California. In these AMAs, I often do a borrowed question, and I used to begin the episodes with them, but then I found that it's really great to just jump right into the true crime material. But the borrowed question this week is going to come from Rollo Tomasi. As I said in some previous AMAs, I've been reading his book, The Rational Male, as well as following along with his YouTube channel of the same name, Rollo Tomasi. He also wrote the book Preventive Medicine, which I hope to read at some point in the future, and he asked and attempted to answer his own question. The borrowed question for this week is, are women attracted to dangerous men? And it is heavily connected to the true crime world, because the examples of dangerous men whom he says are very irresistible to women were Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez the Night Stalker, as well as countless other people who have been in prison yet still have female admirers. I mean, he didn't even say this one, but Tex Watson, Charles Manson's former right-hand man, fathered 4 children in prison because of his conjugal visits from his wife. So it really, is there something going on there? Are women attracted to dangerous men? And he simply said yes. He said that those examples that I just talked about, plus Nicholas Cruz, the Parkland shooter at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, was now getting lots of attention from female admirers. And what is the thought process behind this type of thinking? And I have to disagree with him that no, I don't think women are attracted to dangerous men, because I don't think that that's the element that's leading them to have these types of attractive feelings. Of course that there are people in prison like serial killers or murderers, mass shooters, who get some sort of female attention, but is that because they are dangerous? And I have to just cite countless other examples. Have you heard of Elliot Rodger, the Isla Vista shooter? And he had another nickname, which I don't even like to say, but it's the Virgin Killer. He said very clearly in his manifesto, My Twisted World, that he committed those crimes, the Isla Vista shooting, because he felt that he was denied access to sexuality as well as just power. He also said that he needed to be worshipped like a god, or someone like him, a magnificent gentleman such as himself, would have been a person who should have been the leader of the earth and worshipped like a god. I mean, he said a lot of wacky things, but he was very dangerous. Women were not attracted to him. James Holmes, the Aurora, Colorado shooter, he was also someone who was really just desperate for social interaction, abandoned profiles on dating sites and Adult Friend Finder, Maybe he even used sex workers for a time being. He was very dangerous. He couldn't attract a partner. The Columbine shooters, there are two things that people say about them. Number one, they were bullied, and number two, they never had girlfriends. These people are all very dangerous, yet they weren't attracting partners. What is the true answer then? You mean you might be thinking instantly, okay, these guys like Elliot Rodger or James Holmes or Nicholas Cruz or the Columbine shooters, people didn't know that they were dangerous at the time. They thought they weren't dangerous. That's why people weren't attracted to them. And I think that's it. That's the whole answer. It's not about being dangerous. Simply being dangerous doesn't attract people. It's the excitement that comes from it. And that is why people they were attracted to Ted Bundy before he was executed, or Richard Ramirez, or Nicholas Cruz, if he is getting letters in prison or something from female admirers. I really do not know too much about Nicholas Cruz. I'll take Rollo Tomasi's word for it. But I think that's it, though. That is the answer. It's an excitement issue. That there's some sort of stimulation that is going on with this person. But the whole concept of being dangerous, what do you really mean by that? Because I really began to notice that people seemed like they were often turning a blind eye towards someone who gets really mad and punches the wall, and people even just don't even seem freaked out by that. But if someone is having a panic attack, I noticed other people were very disturbed by that. And this was all about 10, 12 years ago. And I decided to ask somebody once, someone whom I knew was in medical school, why is that the case? Why are people more afraid of this person who's having a panic attack versus someone who's getting angry and punching a wall? And she gave me this answer. People are much more afraid of someone who is nervous compared to someone who is angry. And I was like, well, why is that? And the response was, when somebody's angry, you know what they're going to do. They're going to punch something, they're going to shout, they're going to break something, and you also know how to calm them down. I mean, like, that's like the answer. You're supposed to calm them down. You're supposed to just tell them to take it easy, give them a pat on the back or something. And there's an entire 3-hour conversation that we could have about how that is a bad idea because that's just going to keep encouraging this person to do these destructive things. You're going to tell them, hey, stop doing that, but also give them this comforting reward. So then, even as adults, I mean, somebody said on like one podcast once, there are no adults, we are all children, talking about these types of positive and negative reinforcement behaviors. But when someone is nervous, you don't always know what's causing their nervousness. And also, there's this signal that it sends to the people who are around them that this person is now becoming unpredictable. And it's just like Ian McKellen in the first X-Men movie, mankind fears what it does not understand. And it's just like that. People do not understand what is going on when someone is very nervous, or if somebody is they don't know how to respond to it. Because, I mean, when someone's angry, you tell them to take it easy. You give them a pat on the back. You say, hey, let's just sit down. Let's just, like, cool down for a second. Let's chill out. Okay, you know what to do. When somebody is nervous, it's much more unpredictable. And this can actually be connected to a whole host of other issues. Like back when I was a school teacher, I really found that there were two types of problematic behavior that I would experience in the classroom. One is that there would be students that would misbehave, talking about children, especially between the ages of 9 and 12. The children would misbehave, and some people are doing it because of external things, like they're talking to their friends, they're throwing paper balls, they are shouting or something. They are doing things because of external reasons. Then there are people who are misbehaving because of internal reasons. Their ideas are distracting them. They can't focus and pay attention. And my colleagues were so angry with the kids who were internal, like the kids were just thinking about something else, and they get distracted by something else. and like they're trying to teach us like an English class, and then somebody's in the corner going just making noises and laughing to himself, they would get furious about it. Why did they get furious? It's all of those same things. They don't know what's making this person do this stuff. They don't know why this person's behaving this way. They don't know how to respond to it. They don't know what to do to the person to get them to stop behaving in that way. Just like what we said about being more afraid of someone who's nervous. But that's it though. That could be very dangerous. And that's sending the signal to the brain that this person is dangerous. I mean, you don't know if the person's going to gouge out both of their eyes. You don't know if the person is going to jump off a building. That could have the potential to be very dangerous, but it's not attractive. So no, I don't think that women are attracted to dangerous people or dangerous anything. I think that there is a certain sense of excitement that could come from interacting with somebody who is a high-profile criminal, such as Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez, or Nicholas Cruz. But on the topic of attraction, Dr. Robert Glover, who wrote the book No More Mr. Nice Guy, talks about this a lot when he says that with men, people are attracted to their rough edges. And he means this for men, he means this for women. Anybody wants to be around a guy because of his rough edges. And he's saying this like people want to spend time with someone. They want to be friends with a man who has a rough-edged personality, not a smooth-edged personality. And there's a difference, though, between attraction and likability. Because even if somebody is causing a lot of trouble, you'll often find that people who are mean often have a big social circle around them, unless they're those type of internal me people. Don't talk to me, I'm in my own imagination, I'm ignoring everything that you say. Okay, that might be the exception that proves the rule, but that in that case, you even have to differentiate between attraction and likability. Oh, you might spend time with people whom are very rough-edged. They might say something ridiculous about politics, about religion, maybe even about true crime, and that's just going to get your blood boiling so much that you just have to challenge them. So what are you going to do? You're going to say something very contradictory back to them, and it's going to turn into a giant argument. You don't like the person, you don't even like the argument so much, but you do it, and it does stimulate a lot of chemicals in your brain, and it gets you thinking a lot. However, it's not about likability. You're attracted to that behavior, but you're at the end of the day, you're like, wow, that guy was a jerk for saying all of those things. But you might end up spending time with him again. I do agree with Robert Glover's statement that people are attracted to the rough edges of a man, but they don't always like the rough edges of a man. And I think what Rollo Tomasi was talking about when he said, when he asked the question, are women attracted to dangerous male behavior? I mean, that's paraphrasing it, but it was, are women attracted to dangerous men? I mean, even though I said I disagree with it, I think that he means attraction and likability at the same time. And if someone is going to be dangerous, though, in a way that is not pleasurable, or a way that isn't pleasing, or a way that is not associated with the conventional form of anything, if someone is going to be dangerous in a weird and confusing way, I don't think anybody would want them to be around. I don't think anybody would want to be around them. But that's just my 2 cents on the subject. And I would really like to thank everyone who listened to me go on that giant rant about trying to answer the question of, are women attracted to dangerous men? Anyway, that's the borrowed question for the day. If you have any questions on the subject that you would like for next week's AMA, you can put them in the comments section below. Always appreciated. And
This has been a production of Black Box Online Radio, hosted by Ned. Thanks for tuning in. Black Box Online Radio comes to you 3 times a week, covering serial killers and true crime, but any subject is fair game.
so see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.